The nerves of steel of the pilot. He said, no, you're not. You're going 6 1/4. Don't mix alcohol with Ambien. Rule number 1, don't let anybody outside your cockpit fly your airplane. Okay, number 1 on the Great Question Parade is from Carl T. How often do tires get changed, and do they automatically get changed after a hard landing? Well, no, they don't get changed after a hard landing, although sometimes the airplane gets inspected after a hard landing. The struts and the wings and everything else have to get a look at. And there's parameters on how hard a landing is. Sometimes it feels hard in the back, but it's not all that hard on the airplane. So when the tires get changed, they have to be worn down, just like your tires. And there's certain parameters. There's a lot of plies on those tires, and it's actually fairly liberal how long the tires can go. Here's your little trivia question and answer for the day. How much does a tire cost on a commercial airliner? Around $6,000 per tire. They're expensive, but they're really, really terrific. They go from 0 to 150 in an instant when they touch down, and they don't explode. So again, really, really high quality tires. Next question is from @Samuel Shushko 9778. I recently was on a flight from Houston to Washington, D.C., and as we started going down the runway for takeoff, we aborted the takeoff, and the pilot said it was because another plane had said that there was water shooting out of the back of our plane. The pilot said that sometimes it's a situation that would require maintenance to check it out, and sometimes it's harmless. Can you explain why water might shoot out of a plane? Well, okay, so a plane is like your car. It's like anything else. They sit outside in the rain, in the weather. It's possible for water to collect in certain little pockets on the airplane, and that water wouldn't really kind of come out until you start to accelerate. Think about your car. If you hit it, punched it, and you're accelerating down the road, all the water that's back by your trunk, it's all going to roll out the back and probably down the back of your bumper. There's other reasons that you would see fluids coming from an airplane. Now, hydraulic leaks are not really going to be that dramatic that another airplane from a distance could see that. You could be leaking fuel. Fuel looks like water. You can't tell from a distance, so that's a concern to a pilot. And the other one that's more common is de-icing fluid. In the winter, when you de-ice, they spray that airplane head to toe with the de-icing fluid. The de-icing fluid gets down into everything, and then when you accelerate down the runway, that the motion, the inertia forces all of that de-icing fluid out, and it can look like your airplane's leaking. You can't tell whether it's fuel, you can't tell whether it's hydraulic, and you can't tell whether it's water from a distance. So sometimes the most prudent thing to do is stop the airplane, as long as you're not going too fast. As long as you haven't gotten to that V1 speed, you're good to stop the airplane and go get it checked out. So that's a very insightful question. All right, @ChrisBritt5944 says, can you talk at all about the hurricane spotter planes that brave the winds and tolerances the planes must have, and nerves of steel the pilots must have? The nerves of steel of the pilots. Okay, I flew the airplane that they fly into those hurricanes. So they usually fly P-3 Orions into those hurricanes. They're called Hurricane Hunters. I flew the P-3 on a different mission for the Navy, a very sturdy, very strong airplane. Now, even when they're flying into a hurricane, it's turbulent. There's a lot of winds. They're still using their radar. They're not flying into thunderstorms. You never fly into a thunderstorm, even if it's inside of a hurricane. But you can fly into a hurricane. I wouldn't say that these guys necessarily have nerves of steel. They have stomachs of steel, okay? When you're in an airplane and you're bouncing up and down continually, if you don't have a good stomach, you're not going to last very long in that occupation. And so there's some guys that they can handle it and others that can't. I never really had a problem with my stomach flying airplanes. I know other pilots that did. And again, it's a tough environment, and it's made even more when you're flying inside a hurricane. So awesome question. All right, Andy M18 says this: Captain Steeeve, recently I had a family member who boarded a flight that was delayed at least twice. When he finally was able to board, they pushed back from the gate, and the captain immediately said they had to return back to the gate due to being out of time. Why would they even push back from the gate if they knew they wouldn't be able to fly? They probably didn't know they wouldn't be able to fly when they pushed back, because if they did, they just stay at the gate. Things are constantly moving. It's called your MOT. And your MOT time is constantly, your max on-duty time is constantly changing. The flight attendants have MOTs. The pilots have MOTs. There may be one pilot that was his scheduled trip. There may be another pilot that got assigned to it as a reserve pilot. That reserve pilot's day might have started at 9 o'clock in the morning when he went on call. And so you have to factor in all of that on-call time to when he shows up at 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock that evening. So that MOT might be really tight. Now, why would they push back and then, well, that MOT time is based on getting off the ground. So they might push back off the gate and then be told by ground control when they check in that there's 28 airplanes ahead of them and they're going to expect to be on the ground for another 45 minutes. At that point, they go, we can't get off in time. So it's a constant moving, rolling target, the MOT is, and that's why they would push back off the gate and then a minute later. And I get it, folks. It's super frustrating. It's super frustrating in the back when that happens, especially after you've been deplaned twice and put back on the airplane. But there are rules, and that's the FAA, and I can't violate those rules, and you don't want me to. All right. Excellent question. All right. At Iragonzo97. Hi, Captain. How common, if at all, is speeding during taxiing at airports? It seems like the rules should be strict, but do all pilots abide by the taxi speed limits? Yep, pretty much. It's very uncomfortable to taxi too fast in an airplane, and generally speaking, you have enough stuff that you have to keep doing that you kind of go slowly towards the runway to get all your checklists done and get ready for departure. In addition to that, you usually have other airplanes in front of you, so you can't go that fast. I once got scolded for taxiing too slow, and that was over in India. And the Indian ground controller asked me what my taxi speed was. And so you look at the screen and it said 10 knots, and that's well within acceptable limits. He said, no, you're not. You're going 6 1/4. And I said, well, no, we're going 10. And he said, you're going 6 1/4. And he commanded me to pick up my taxi speed. Now, I was in a fully loaded 777 at max gross weight. We were at 775,000 pounds. And to say that the surfaces of their taxiways over there was less than optimal is a compliment. They were really rough, and I just wasn't going to take this fully loaded 777 at 15 or 18 knots of taxi speed and damage my airplane somehow. So I thought, you know what, 10 knots is good for me. Rule number 1, don't let anybody outside your cockpit fly your airplane for you. This dude, he was trying to fly my airplane for me. So I pushed back on him. He put me in the penalty box. I had to sit there for 20 minutes and do a little timeout. It's like the little timeout chair for a kid. And then finally he released me and let me go out, and I taxied at 10 knots. All right. That's the way it is. All right. At Barry Fitzgerald 3839. What are the limits of weight and balance calculations? I've never seen everything weighed before you get on. Okay, that's good. So it's like, how do you determine the total weight of an airplane? Well, they have kind of some ballpark things. Every bag that you send to go underneath the airplane as claimed bags on the other end, those all get weighed. So they go, when they go through the little door, they get weighed, so we know the exact weight of all of those. Then they end up on the airplane. They use an average ballpark weight for men and women on an airplane, and they add a little bit seasonally. In the winter, they add a few more pounds because you gain weight in the winter, and you wear heavier coats. And then they have an average weight of your carry-on, and then they add a fudge factor to all of that. They know how much the airplane weighs, they know how much fuel you put in, right down to the ounce. So all of that stuff gets factored in when they come up with it. And again, that fudge factor is on top of all of that. So there's always margins in this. That's how they do it. Don't you wish you could just kind of drive up on a big old scale and sit there for a second and then the screen and come up and go, this is exactly how much you weigh? But I think that would be rather expensive to do. They are usually really, really good with their calculations. All right, thank the Lord, 4536. What exactly causes turbulence? Turbulence are currents. They're currents like air currents. And so when you go out and you feel the wind, that's an air current. When the wind picks up and gets stiffer, that's a wind current, right? When you're going down, when you're on a lake on a boat, it's just as calm as can be. That's a current. There's like no current underneath you at all. Then when you start going down a river, the speed picks up a little bit. Then when you get to the whitewater part, it really gets crazy. That's exactly what air currents are. Generally speaking, when you run into turbulence, it's some meeting of jet streams many times, or weather fronts, a low and a high collide with each other. That's where you get most of your turbulence. What I'll do is I'll try to find a different altitude to find a better ride for you. Turbulence are no big deal. The airplane is not going to come apart. And if you're concerned about any of that sort of stuff, go to Captain Steeeve with 3es.com and scroll down and look for our Conquering Your Fear of Flying course. I talk extensively there about turbulence, what they are, what they aren't. It'll put your mind at ease and it'll help you get over your fear of flying. All right, good one. Nastine writes, why do devices need to be put in airplane mode during taxi, takeoff, and landing? Okay, so years and years ago when we first started getting all these devices that we carried with us, there was a lot of uncertainty about if it would impact the navigation equipment of an airplane. So the FAA did a whole bunch of tests, and they came up with some stuff. They thought, out of an abundance of caution, let's get everybody to turn off their devices, or that's where they came up with airplane mode, and they just put them in airplane mode so they don't transmit. And if you think about it, you're in a long metal tube, and at one end is all my electronic and navigation gear. So I want to make sure that that's operating properly and it's not being interfered with by anything. Now, you can go and look at thousands of YouTube videos and websites devoted to what a bunch of bunk it is and it doesn't impact it at all. I just want to be cautious and safe, so I turn my stuff off. You know what? I can live without my device until I get to 10,000 feet. I really can, and so can you. But on rare occasions, all those devices can cause some interference for the navigation gear, and that's really a concern if I'm in bad weather. If it's really clear outside, is it a big deal? Not really. But you didn't hear that here. Okay, there you go. Steve Large, 5215, Captain Steeeve, my 20-year-old son has always wanted to be a pilot and has started the process to get his private pilot's license. His ultimate goal is to become a commercial pilot. Could you please tell my wife and I the best way to support this? Well, he's 20 years old, so he's right in the zone. He's really young. And again, get him out to the airport. Get him some flight time. If he's already well beyond that and he's flying now and he's getting his qualifications, help him to get as many hours as he possibly can. The more hours he gets, the quicker he can get hired by an airline. And if he can get hired by a regional carrier with just 1,500 hours, they're paying really well these days. About 8 years ago, they weren't paying very well. It was like $15 an hour after all the debt you accumulated and all the hours that you paid for on your own. Now they're paying really good coin right from the beginning. So those are quality jobs right off the bat. And then after a few years there, he'll fleet up to a major airline and then he'll really make the big bucks. So I would say if he's got a passion for that, you know what? He'll follow your passion. You'll never work a day in your life. And if he loves flying airplanes, then be supportive of that. See what you can do to help along the way within reason and see where it goes from there. Okay, good. Kate Richard 9274 writes, why are some landings feather light, a Captain Steeeve landing, and smooth and others slam down hard? Is this due to the pilot's style or talent, or is it due to the wind? And what happens when the plane bounces? I've experienced all kinds of landings and I'm looking forward to learning more. Thanks. That's a very insightful question. It's a combination of all of those things. Sometimes the pilot's skill, sometimes the weather that day, sometimes the airplane you're on. It's like a golf swing, right? The most frustrating thing on the planet is to get your golf swing right, because there's about 42 different things you have to do all at one time. Same thing with landing an airplane. But if you stay on the same airplane for a while, you can get pretty good at it. And I'll be honest, some airplanes land better or easier than others. The 777 was an absolute delight to fly. It was a good old gal that just settled right in every time. And you just pull that nose back gently at the bottom in the flare, pull your power back to idle, and then that baby would just want to land. It would just settle in and very nice and smooth. Sometimes you're on a shorter runway, so you don't want to float down the runway because you're using up too much of it. So a pilot will force the airplane down a little bit early, and sometimes you get a firmer landing. For instance, if you're flying into LaGuardia or Orange County, California, you can expect a firm landing. It's not done to make you uncomfortable. It's made to keep the airplane on the first 1,000 foot of the runway and not burn up too much runway in front of you. So it's a safer landing, even though it's firmer. There's the old joke about Navy pilots versus Air Force pilots. I'm here to tell you, I'm a Navy pilot, and I've had smooth landings over all these years. I've flown with some of the worst Air Force pilots out there. Just because a Navy guy landed on a boat, on a ship, doesn't mean that he always has hard landings. That's a completely different dynamic. They set an attitude and they fly it right down to the deck, and they on purpose are colliding with the deck. A commercial pilot is trained to flare at the end, and it smooths out the landing, whether you're Navy or Air Force. All right. Okay, Mama B 2020 question. As a nervous flyer, what should I know that would make me less nervous? Well, turbulence are no big deal. The wings are not going to come off the airplane. No airplanes ever come apart in flight because of turbulence. There's a couple of things. Again, don't mix alcohol with Ambien to think that you're kind of going to calm your nerves. That makes a lot of people psychotic, and you'll end up in jail, most likely. So that's a bad combination. I would learn as much, get as much information as you can about flying. Come to this channel as often as you possibly can. Watch all the videos. Read the comments. People over and over again are saying, hey, I feel well informed now. I feel educated, and I'm much less nervous about getting on an airplane because Captain Steeeve has helped me with that. And the last thing I'll say about that is go to CaptainSteeeve.com and check out our Conquering Your Fear of Flying course. It's only $29. It's a little expenditure, but it's a whole lot of great information that is guaranteed to help you get over your fear of flying. Folks, these are great questions this week. Keep the good questions coming, and you might be on the next episode of Ask the Captain.